My name is Belinda Puller, and welcome to Belinda's Corner, a saltwater taffy show. Today we're going to be looking at Animorphs 2, The Visitor, which was released in June 1996. It is narrated by Rachel, who on the cover morphs into a fluffy gray cat. The cover still hadn't settled into their iconic groove, as Rachel, like Jake on the last cover, is only seen from the neck up. This book starts with a sequence of the Animorphs in their bird forms taking a thermal ride with Tobias, and this is a passage I'm quite fond of. Applegate was always good with descriptions of life in an animal's body. Quote, "Forget surfing, forget skateboarding, forget snowboarding. You haven't had a thrill till you've ridden the thermals a mile into the air and then gone hurtling straight down at maximum speed." This opening scene is wonderful. I bring it up because a lot of the later intros spend forever on the whole, we can't tell us who we are, and Yerks need to leave their hosts every third day, stuff like that. This passage does spend a lot of time mourning Tobias's loss of humanity, with notes like Tobias has way more practice flying than the other four, and that there were only 4 sets of clothes waiting for them on the ground, even though there were 5 of them. But given Rachel's attachment to Tobias, I'll not only let it slide, but I'll let it stand as a great characterization moment. Also, if I can go back to the invasion for a second, I feel like they didn't spend long enough on Tobias becoming a Nothlid. He's just kinda like, oops, stayed too long and morphed, now I'm a hawk forever on the next to last page. So this sequence and the entirety of the next book is arguably something of an apology for how this life-changing event is brushed aside in book 1. In general, one of the most laudable things about Animorphs is that it has 6 narrators and I can tell them all apart. The Visitor gives us a good look into Rachel's head, and we can tell that it's not Jake's. Not just because her mind is occupied by shopping and clothes and girly things and Jake's isn't, but her deeper character shines through in her dialogue. All of the characters shine through their inner dialogue, and we'll especially see that once we get to Axe. The main plot is the Animorphs need to get to Chapman, so they need Rachel to spy on his daughter Melissa, Rachel's best friend, to get closer to Chapman. As an aside, it's interesting that despite the Animorphs' insistence on anonymity, they do give Melissa a full, if somewhat common, name, Melissa Chapman. It's true that this could be an alias, but nevertheless, the gang doesn't know if Melissa is a controller like her father, but she's been saddened recently by her father not acting like himself and becoming more distant. Rachel morphs into Melissa's cat, Fluffer McKitty, while the genuine article is out of the house. Interestingly, Fluffer is described as being a black and white cat, while the cat on the cover is a long-furred gray tabby. The cat on the inside flipbook morph also appears to be mostly black and have short fur, which is perhaps a more accurate image of Fluffer. After spying on Mr. and Mrs. Chapman, Rachel tends to a crying Melissa, distraught over how her parents don't seem to love her anymore without any reason or warning. After calming her with purring, Rachel, seeing firsthand the evidence of the home-wrecking power of Yerks, decides then and there to destroy them all. Visser 3 catches Rachel spying on him and Chapman, though he continues assuming she's an Andalite, and orders Chapman to kill her and take Melissa in to become a controller, though he and his wife try to fight the Yerks to protect their daughter. We later learn Chapman willingly became a controller to protect Melissa, and part of his deal was that Melissa couldn't be harmed. If Melissa was made a controller, Chapman would make life hell for the Yerk in his brain. Visser 3 agrees to let him go, but he gets to keep Rachel as Fluffer, who has Jake sneaking on her back as a flea. Jake finds a way to morph from flea to human to tiger real quick to fight off Visser 3, and he and Rachel escape from his clutches. At the end of the book, Rachel secretly writes a note to Melissa explaining to her that her father loves her more than she could ever know. I like that for their second story, Animorphs went with a more intimate personal story as opposed to a big, flashy action set-piece type story. This story is more or less a family drama surrounding the Chapmans with a little sci-fi action sprinkled on top. In a lot of ways, it sets the tone for the rest of the series. If you're here for all action all the time, you will not enjoy Animorphs. It's not like there's no action scenes or big tension moments, but at heart, The Visitor is a quiet story. I'll see you again in 2 weeks for Animorphs 3, The Encounter.